Yeah. And I know you think about this as a global problem. My wife and I with our family foundation think about it as a, local problem for disadvantaged kids. Like one of the common things that we see is that parent engagement makes a big difference in the educational outcomes for kids. And if you look at the children of immigrants, in East San Jose or East Palo Alto here in the Silicon Valley, like, often the parents are working two, three jobs. Like they're so busy that like they have a hard time being engaged with their kids. And sometimes they don't speak English. And so like they don't even have the linguistic ability. And you can just imagine what a technology like this could do, where it really doesn't care what language you speak. It can bridge that gap between the parent and the teacher, and it can, be there to, help the parent understand, like, where the roadblocks are for the child, and to, like, even potentially like get very personalized to the child's needs and sort of help them, on the things that they're struggling with. I think it's really, really very exciting.
Yeah, just the language barriers, we often forget about that. And that comes up in developing world. India has a lot of languages. And I was at the Bangalore Research Lab as part of that trip. And, they're taking these advanced technologies and trying to deal with the tail of languages. So that's not a huge barrier.
One of the things that you said at at the GPT-4 dinner at your house, is that you had this experience early in Microsoft's history where you saw a demo that changed your way of thinking about, how the personal computing industry was going to unfold, and that caused you to pivot the direction of the company. I wonder if you might be willing to share that with everyone.
Yeah, so Xerox had made lots of money on copying machines. They got out ahead. Their patents were there. The Japanese competition hadn't come in. And so they created a research center out in Palo Alto, which was forever known by its acronym, Palo Alto Research Center, PARC. And at PARC, they assembled a incredible set of talent. Bob Taylor and others were very good judges of talent. So you end up with Alan Kay, Charles Simonelli, Butler Lamson, and I don't want to leave anybody out, but there's like a bunch of other people, and they create a graphics user interface machine. They weren't the only ones. There were people over in Europe doing some of these things, but they combined it with a lot of things. They put it on a network. They got a laser printer. And Charles Simonelli was there programming this and did a word processor that used that very graphical bitmap screen and let you do things like fonts, stuff we take for granted now. And so I went and visited Charles at PARC at night, and he demoed what he had done with this Bravo word processor, and then he printed on the laser printer a document of all the things that should be done, if there were cheap, pervasive computers. And he and I brainstormed that, and he updated the document and printed it again. And it just blew my mind. And, the agenda for Microsoft came out of, that's like in, that's 1979 that
Wow.
I'm with him. And computers are still, completely character mode. And, so that's when the commitment to do software for the Mac emerges from Steve Jobs having a similar experience with Bob Belleville at Xerox PARC. And, Xerox built a very expensive machine called the Star that they only sold a few thousand of because, people didn't think of word processing as something you would pay. You had to come in really at the low end. So PCs with first character mode, but later graphics word processing, so I hired Charles. Charles helped do Word and Excel and many of our are great things. And eventually, 15 years after Charles had shown me his thinking and we'd brainstorm, we largely achieved through Windows and Office on both Windows and Mac, we'd largely achieved that piece of paper. But so I told the group that was the other demo that had kind of blown my mind and made me think, okay, what can be achieved in the next 5 to 10 years? We should be more ambitious, taking advantage of this breakthrough, even with the imperfections that we're going to reduce over time.
Yeah, it was a really powerful and motivating anecdote that you shared. So maybe one last thing here, before we go, or maybe two more things. So, what do you think are the big grand challenges that we ought to be thinking about, over the next 5 to 10 year period? So like in a sense, like this, I actually have this piece of paper that Charles wrote. It's like here by my desk frame because like I think it was one of the more like unbelievable predictions of a like technology cycle that anybody's ever written. And like I don't know why everybody doesn't know about the existence of this thing. Like it's just unbelievable. But so like as you sort of think about like what lies ahead of us over the next 5 to 10 years, what's your challenge, not just to Microsoft, but to everybody in the world who's going to be thinking about this? Like, what do you think we ought to go push on really, really hard?
Well, there'll be a set of innovations on how you execute these algorithms. Lots of chips, some movement from silicon to optics to reduce the energy and the cost. So immense innovation, where NVIDIA's the leader today, but others will try and challenge them as they keep getting better and, using even some radical approaches because we want to get the cost of execution on these things and even the training dramatically less than it is today. Ideally, we'd like to move them so that often you can do them on a self-contained client device, not have to go up to the cloud to get these things. So lots to be done on the platform that this uses. Then we have an immense challenge in the software side of figuring out, okay, do you just have many specialized versions of this thing, or do you have one that just keeps getting better? And, there'll be immense competition of those two approaches. Even at Microsoft, we'll pursue both in parallel with each other. And ideally, within a contained domain, we'll get something that the accuracy is provably extremely high by limiting the areas that it works in and by having the training data and even perhaps some pre-checking, post-checking type logic that applies to that. I definitely think areas like sales and service that there is a lot that can be done there and that's super valuable. The notion that there is this emergent capability means that the push to try and scale up even higher, that'll be there. Now, what corpuses exist, once you get past, every piece of text and video, are you synthetically generating things? And do you still see that, improvement as you scale up? Obviously, that'll get pursued. And, the fact that it costs billions of dollars to do that won't stand in the way of that going ahead in a very high-speed way. And then, there's a lot of societal things of, okay, where can we push it in education? It's not that it'll just immediately understand student motivation or student cognition. There'll have to be a lot of training and embedding it in an environment where you're the adults are seeing the engagement of the student and seeing the motivation. And so even though you free up the teacher from a lot of things, that personal relationship piece, you're still going to want all the context coming out from those tutoring sessions to be visible and help the dialogue that's there with the teacher or with the patient. And so, Microsoft talks about making humans more productive. So some things will be automated, but many things will just be facilitated where the final engagement is very much a human, but a human who's able to get a lot more done than ever before. So the number of challenges and opportunities created by this is pretty incredible. And, and I can see how engaged the OpenAI team is by this. I'm sure there's lots of teams I don't get to see that are, pushing on this. And the size of the industry, I mean, when the microprocessors invented, the software industry was a tiny industry. I mean, we, could put most of us on a panel, and they could complain that I work too hard and it shouldn't be allowed. We could all laugh about that. Now this is a global industry with, and so it's a little harder to get your hands around. I get a weekly, digest of all the different articles about AI that are being written. Can we use it for moral questions, which seems silly to even ask to me, but fine, people can ask whatever they want to ask. This thing has the ability to move faster because the amount of people and resources and companies is way beyond those other breakthroughs that I brought up and, was privileged to live through.
Yeah.